May 8th, 1945. U-boat, somewhere in the North Atlantic. The radio's crackling. Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, he's just sent the order every submarine commander's been dreading. Unconditional surrender, surface, now. Get a black flag up, head to the nearest Allied port. That's it. War's over. The captain looks at his crew. 50 guys, maybe more, crammed into a steel tube. Smells like diesel and sweat and fear. They've been fighting for 6 years. Some of them since they were kids, teenagers. And now this, some voice on the radio telling them it's finished. He gives the order. They surface, hands up, black flags snapping in the wind. The crew climbs out onto the deck, squinting into sunlight they haven't seen in weeks. They're thinking, okay, we get processed, maybe a prison camp for a few months, then we go home. That's how it works, right? They've heard the Americans treat prisoners okay. Hot food, clean beds, cigarettes even. They're wrong about all of it. 1,000 miles south, another U-boat gets the same order. Oberleutnant José Otto Vermuth, 25 years old. He's been commanding U-530 for 4 months. And look, he expended 10 torpedoes, 3 different convoys. 9 missed, 1 never even launched. His first attack? Battery explosion in the torpedo tube. Nothing. Weapon never even launched. 10 torpedoes. Nothing to show for it. Then the radio crackles. Surrender, they're saying. Vermuth doesn't trust it. He tells his crew, listen, this could be a trick, an Allied deception. They're trying to get us to surface so they can capture or destroy us. We should wait, verify, make sure. But, and here's the thing, according to the US naval attaché who interrogated him later in Buenos Aires, there's little doubt but that he knew positively that the surrender messages were authentic. He knew. Vermuth knew the war was over. He didn't want to surrender. So the crews that actually surrendered, they're expecting something pretty straightforward when they reach Allied ports. Processing centers, paperwork, a few weeks in a POW camp, maybe a few months, then release. Trains heading east, back to Germany. Families waiting for years, you know? That's what they expected. What they actually found? Chaos. Total chaos. Europe's infrastructure, it's bombed into rubble. The entire postal system's collapsed. Addresses don't even exist anymore because the buildings at those addresses don't exist. Families scattered, dead, unreachable. And the Allied occupation zones are just overwhelmed. Can't handle the volume. 11 million displaced persons in Germany alone. Another 40 million across the continent. Holocaust survivors crammed into camps that look, and this is horrifying, that look disturbingly like the camps they'd just escaped from. Former soldiers, guys who survived 6 years of mechanized slaughter, they're dying of starvation now. In peacetime. There's no infrastructure, no food distribution, nothing. The Reichsmark? Worthless. Can't even buy a loaf of bread with it. The only currency that matters is cigarettes, sex, physical labor. A U-boat officer's entire life savings, it amounts to nothing. And then winter comes. The hunger winter. That's what Germans call it. The hunger winter of 1945 to 1946. In the British occupation zone, the official daily ration was 1,200 calories. Think about that. That's literally half of what your body needs to function. Half. I'm not talking about going on a diet. I'm not talking about tightening your belt. Your body requires a certain amount of energy just to keep working. And these people are getting half of that. Over weeks, your body starts consuming itself. Muscle disappears. Your brain starts degrading. Your immune system collapses. A regular infection becomes fatal. A cold? A cold can kill you. Not because the cold itself is dangerous, because your body doesn't have the resources to fight it anymore. Kids in hospitals dying from illnesses that should have been minor. Their bodies just couldn't heal. Not enough fuel. Not enough energy. The winter of 1945 to 46 killed thousands. Now jump to Argentina, July 10th, 1945. 2 months after the surrender order. Mar del Plata, Argentine naval port. Morning. Sunshine. White buildings. Palm trees. It's summer down there. A submarine surfaces off the coast. U-530. It's been at sea for 129 days. Travelled approximately 7,000 nautical miles, south through the Atlantic, avoiding shipping lanes, radio silence, running from everything collapsing around them. But before they enter the port, Vermuth gives one final order. Sabotage the engines. His men cut off the oil circulation. They drain the lubricant. They race the motors until they start to seize, and then, for good measure, they pump a mixture of nitric, sulfuric, and hydrochloric acid through the engine block. All the remaining oil tanks. Acid goes everywhere. U-530 glides into Mar del Plata harbour on dead engines. This submarine's not sailing again. Not ever. Vermuth made sure of it. The Argentine Navy takes them into custody. 54 German sailors in a country that hasn't had combat in over 100 years. Curiosities, not criminals. But Allied interrogators arrive fast. Questions coming rapid fire. Where'd you go? What was the mission? Who was on board? And then there's one question above everything else. Did you transport Adolf Hitler to South America? The conspiracy theories are already going. A German submarine in Argentina 63 days after the war ends? The timing's suspicious. The route's suspicious. They deliberately destroyed the ship's log, the radar, the deck gun, all the torpedoes. That's extremely suspicious. The Allies were convinced Vermuth was hiding something. Nazi gold. War criminals, Hitler himself, alive and plotting some comeback from the jungles of Patagonia. I mean, that's what they thought. They interrogated him for weeks, every crew member. They tore the submarine apart, looking for something, anything. Found nothing, because there was nothing to find. Vermuth told them the truth. There wasn't any secret cargo, no hidden mission. He just refused to trust a voice on the radio, and when that refusal turned into absolute certainty, he ran. The interrogators didn't believe him. Why would they? The story is absurd. A 25-year-old commander doesn't just defy the collapse of his entire military hierarchy because he's suspicious. That doesn't happen. Except it did. The crew settles into internment, and slowly, over months, they start to understand what they've escaped. Mail from Germany takes forever to arrive, if it arrives at all. The postal system barely functions. Addresses don't even exist anymore. But some letters get through. Fragments of information from a country that's tearing itself apart. Imagine this scene. Small room in the internment facility, bare walls, a table. 6, 7 crewmen gathered around. One guy holding an envelope. Thin paper, German stamps. The handwriting of someone he knows. His sister. She's alive. She's in Hamburg. He opens the letter, careful, real careful. Reads it to himself first, and his face just changes. What's it say? He starts reading aloud. The city is gone. I cannot describe it. Where our street was, there is rubble. I sleep in a cellar with 11 other people. He pauses, swallows hard, keeps going. Last week, I found a dead horse in the street. Other women were already there. We fought for pieces of the meat. I got a piece from the leg. It fed us for 3 days. The men listening, they don't move. Nothing. There is no coal. We burned the furniture. Now there is no furniture. Someone shifts. A chair creaks. The children in the hospital cannot recover from ordinary infections. There is not enough food for their bodies to heal. I watched a boy die from a cold. A cold. He stops reading, looks up at all these faces around him. These are the guys who wanted to surrender, right? These are the same men who thought Vermont was paranoid. These are the same men who spent 63 days crammed in a steel tube, wondering if their captain had lost his mind. I waited in line for 6 hours for my ration card. It is worth 1,200 calories per day. They say a person needs twice that. I am always hungry. I cannot remember what it feels like to be full. The room is silent. Let me put this in numbers that hurt. In Germany's British occupation zone, December 1945, official daily ration is 1,200 calories. Minimum human requirement? 2,000 to 2,500. That's a shortfall of 800 to 1,300 calories every single day. Same month, Argentina. The U-530 crew gets 3 meals daily. Consistent food, not fancy, but consistent. They've got beds, showers, medical care. They're playing football on a naval base while their countrymen are literally fighting over horse meat. The contrast is absolutely brutal. German surrendered crews, 1,200 calories. Bombed out buildings for shelter, no heating fuel, currency that's worthless. Freezing temperatures, medical facilities that are overwhelmed. U-530 crew, 2,000 plus calories, barracks with beds, heating that works, an economy that functions. It's summer in the southern hemisphere, mild weather, naval medical facilities that actually have supplies. So by disobeying orders, just by doing that, Otto Vermuth accidentally saved his crew from the 2 worst years in modern German history. But here's the thing about Vermuth. He wasn't a hero. The US Naval Attaché's interrogation report, it paints this complicated picture. Not clean. At first, he came across as completely dispirited. Germany lost the war. He had no hopes. Nothing. But then things changed. He cooperated, mostly. But he consistently refused to give information about specific routes and areas. See, he was protecting something. Probably just himself. And a few days after the interrogation ended, something shifted. According to the report, he started to brighten up, noticeably. So at one point he says something. And it reveals everything about who this guy actually was. He said he liked this country. It was a good place to live. And that once all of this blew over, he figured he'd send for his family and settle down here. That's not a guy mourning the fall of the Reich. That's a guy calculating his next move. Vermuth wasn't an ideological fanatic, wasn't some brilliant strategist either. He was just this opportunistic survivor who made a decision in a moment of doubt. And whatever his real motivation was, whatever was actually going on in his head, that decision saved 54 men from starvation. The conspiracy theories about U-boats reaching Argentina went absolutely nuclear. Hitler alive in South America. The Fourth Reich organizing in the jungle. Submarines carrying gold, documents, war criminals. The speculation basically became a cottage industry, and it's still going, even now. The interrogators found nothing, and I mean nothing. A young commander basically looked at the situation and went, "Yeah, running beats getting caught in this chaos." Now here's where it gets terrifying. Like, this stops being history class and becomes something real. Otto Vermuth commanded a diesel submarine, Type 9C/40, 6 torpedo tubes, a deck gun, limited range, limited firepower, nothing special. When he went silent and bolted for Argentina, sure, he was annoying. But he wasn't an existential threat. Not like today's submarine commanders. They're controlling nuclear arsenals. We're talking about weapons that could, literally, end human civilization. An Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine, the Navy calls them boomers, carries 24 Trident II missiles. Each one's got multiple, independently targetable warheads. A single submarine. One boat. One crew. One commander. And that commander can destroy an entire nation by themselves. And here's the thing. These commanders operate under exactly the same conditions Vermouth faced. Isolated. Underwater. Getting orders through radio signals they can't independently verify. That's how it works. The military calls it mission-type orders with minimal communication. The whole assumption is that commanders will obey.
That the chain of command holds, even when you can't see it. That some officer, thousands of miles from home, hundreds of feet underwater, is going to trust a voice on a speaker over his own judgment. U-530 proved that assumption dead wrong. A 25-year-old didn't trust the voice. He went silent. He ran. And because his weapons were just conventional torpedoes that mostly missed anyway, the world kept spinning. But imagine the same scenario now. A nuclear submarine commander gets a launch order and he thinks it's fake. Or he gets a stand-down order and he thinks it's enemy deception. He can't call home. He can't verify anything. He's got to decide, alone, whether to trust or doubt. The ocean's vast. Submarines are invisible. And the power to end everything, that's sitting in the hands of men we've specifically trained to be skeptical of the exact kind of signals that would tell them to stop. Vermouth's ghost is on every boomer patrol. Every single one. Early 1946. The Argentine government releases the U-530 crew. No charges, no extradition, no consequences. They walk out with their health, their lives, and opportunities they'd never have had back in occupied Germany. Some stay in Argentina, some scatter across South America. A few eventually make it back to Germany, years later, when the worst is over. When the rubble's cleared, the economy's stabilizing, the hunger's fading into memory. But in early 1946, while their countrymen are still starving at home, the U-530 crew's dispersing into a functioning society. They've got skills, they've got their health, they've got a head start. All because their captain didn't trust a radio signal. One of the crew gets interviewed decades later. Old guy by then, grey hair, weathered face, the kind of face that's seen things. The interviewer asks him about Vermouth, about the decision to run, about 63 days in that steel tube, not knowing if they're making the right call. The old man just thinks about it for a second. "We drew 4 aces," he says, "and we didn't even know we were playing." This isn't a story about heroism. Vermouth wasn't brave, he was scared. He wasn't strategic, he was suspicious. He didn't save his men through brilliant planning. He saved them because he was stubborn enough to not trust authority at the exact moment when trusting authority would have been catastrophic. The men who obeyed orders, the ones who surfaced, raised black flags, surrendered to the nearest Allied port. They did the right thing. They followed the rules. They believed in the chain of command. They thought compliance would get them home. They were wrong. The men who didn't obey, the ones who threw their torpedoes overboard, destroyed their engines, ran across an ocean to a neutral port, they did the wrong thing. Direct defiance. Rejected the chain of command, acting out of fear and self-interest. And they survived. Sometimes the right decision gives you the wrong outcome. Sometimes the wrong decision saves your life. You draw 4 aces and don't even realize you're holding cards. The universe doesn't care about your intentions. Here's the final irony, the one that still echoes through naval academies everywhere. We train submarine commanders to be independent thinkers, to make decisions under pressure, to trust their own judgment when communication goes dark. We literally select for the personality type Otto Vermuth had: skeptical, self-reliant, willing to defy orders when the situation demands it. And then we hand them the keys to nuclear Armageddon and hope they obey. Every ballistic missile submarine on patrol right now, American, Russian, British, French, Chinese, they're all carrying enough firepower to end civilization. Every commander's been trained to question orders. Every single one operates in complete isolation, getting signals they can't verify from chains of command they can't even see. What happens when one of them decides he doesn't trust the voice on the radio? We don't know. We've never found out. But Otto Vermuth showed us what the math looks like when the skeptic is right and the weapons are conventional. The stakes are somewhat higher now. U-530 sat in Mar del Plata harbour while the Argentine Navy figured out what to do with it. Engines destroyed beyond repair, log gone, radar gone, torpedoes at the bottom of the Atlantic. Just a hull, empty, useless. But the men who sailed it lived, most of them anyway. They lived through the worst years, the absolute worst. Because their captain, he was paranoid or selfish or suspicious or, honestly, all of it. He refused an order that literally everyone else followed. They lived because Otto Vermuth drew 4 aces, and he didn't even know he was playing. Subscribe for more stories like this.